For You podcast. I'm Paul Pleshek. I'm here with my co-host Sonny Callaham, and we are starting a podcast that's really related to the flooring industry. Everything in the flooring industry, every aspect of it, personalities, news, issues that affect every one of us. My co-host again, Sonny Callaham. Sonny, how you doing today?
Hey, how you doing today, Paul? I'm doing well. Looking
Yeah,
forward to this.
let's sit here and act like we haven't talked about starting this podcast for the last hour, trying to figure out how the heck to do it, and pretend we're just started talking, right?
Exactly. It's all fresh.
This is all new, right? It's right off the cuff, or nothing planned here. We'll just improv it. Yeah, that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna improv it. But Sonny and I come from different backgrounds. We've got different viewpoints in the industry. I think that's one of the things that's going to make it interesting, is that divergent viewpoint that we may have in the
Nice one there,
industry.
Paul. Subtlety is not
Yeah,
your
yeah.
strong suit.
Yeah. Well, so so as you could probably tell already, the goal here is to keep it lighthearted. Hopefully, it's entertaining as well as informational, educational. We're going to look at having guests that are on the show. Not today because we really wanted to just introduce the show to the listeners, but going forward, we're going to look for personalities. We've got somebody lined up that, frankly, is one of the personalities in the industry, and a great guy to talk about marketing and so forth. That's Go
Mr.
ahead,
Ken
son.
Ballin.
I keep mispronouncing his name, so
Yeah, it's not Ballin for sure. It's Mr. Ken Ballin from Flooring Installers of America. It's where I got to know him. And he does a unique job on marketing himself, marketing his company, and actually getting the premium for the services that he gives his customers. He's not just an installer, he is a marketing machine. And I know salespeople and installers who are going to be listening to this, they can learn a lot from this young man.
I've really been impressed. I got a chance, and I'll talk to him about it a little next week. But he did one of the competitions at CFI last year,
He
and
did.
he those competitions are baptism by fire, and he did a phenomenal job. But the challenges that are dealt with, putting together a complicated installation that you're supposed to make look perfect, well, everybody's lined up behind you watching, and I think it's going to make for a really interesting discussion.
Yeah, using somebody else's tools with installers hovering over your back. No pressure there at all. So kudos to all the guys who did that.
And we know from his Facebook page that everybody that's on there is so supportive. And
Oh yeah,
well,
they're loving. And
there's never a critical
positive remarks only. That's all they do.
never a critical statement at all. So yeah, it's like the Twitter sphere, right? You get out there and everybody's anonymous, and it just shows the best of humanity.
Yeah,
Sometimes,
that's it.
right?
We're just here to get along. That's all.
Just here to get along. I'm just trying to encourage you. Yeah. That's what it is. But a lot of the subjects we're going to talk about are things that Sonny and I talk about all the time. I mean, we discuss. We both of us work in a lot of associations. I'm on the board of the ICRC. I'm past president of the National Institute of Certified Floor Coverings Inspectors. I know Sonny served on FCICA, right?
Yep, I'm on their board. Just go ahead, take a minute, Paul. Tell everybody about where you came from, your background, and how you got into this lovely industry.
Well, the industry itself really started. I had absolutely no desire whatsoever to be involved with my father's building services company, and so when I started not my first real job or first full-time job, but first job that I got into that I thought of as a career or something that I would pursue was appliance repair. And it was appliance repair. It was
You were the Maytag man.
I was the Whirlpool man, but sure. And one day I was working, lifting a box off a new refrigerator, and yeah, I was a delivery guy too. Let's not make it sound like it was advanced technical here, but blew out my shoulder. Just lifting the big old refrigerator box off, blew out my shoulder. Doctor said, "Yeah, you'll probably be out, 4 to 6 weeks." He took me into surgery, repaired it all up. I came out. Yeah, he said, moving around appliance, it's gonna be more like 4 months. because I
Oh
had
wow.
torn the, I don't know if it's the labrum or whatever, right around the rotator cuff. So that was a shop of 4 people. They weren't exactly waiting for me to get back in 4 to 6 months. So I I took my arm in a sling and started doing work for my dad's building services company, and that rolled into doing carpet cleaning. And so at 20 years old, I started a carpet cleaning business that did residential and commercial off of my parents' janitorial service. So janitorial building services nowadays. It's not, yeah. So I started doing the the building maintenance within that. Hated it. Just was the same thing every day. Everybody's got different things they want out of a job. That just wasn't for me. And I got into the carpet clean, but I got certified by the ICRC pretty early on. And that's really where my affinity for that organization stems from, is that everything I've done in my career was really based off that education that started there. And, we'll talk more about it, but that rolls into, where we're at with NAFCT and things we do with educational programs and things like that. But where'd you start with your first industry position?
Well, I come by that story that everybody knows somebody who's in floor covering, and my father knew a guy who owned a store, and since I was about 13 years old, I started going there in the summertime, rolling remnants and going out on job sites with people, and started out being a helper. And in 1991, yeah, 1991, I started full time down in Orlando, Florida, and was a helper. Did new construction carpet, new construction houses and carpet. Um, did that for about 5 or 6 years, and quickly realized that my body wasn't going to take doing that every single day for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And so I was really fortunate. We had a couple of large contractors in Central Florida, and one of them was Spraggins Flooring, and they needed a service manager at the time. So one of the installation managers, Stephen Cooper, he took a chance on a 25-year-old kid and said, "Hey, come in and start this service department. We don't have anything." Started it from scratch. When I left a year and a half later, we had, I think, 12 technicians and 10 trucks, and just really took it from nothing to something. And that's kind of where I started, with dealing with service and complaints and homeowners and what really is a complaint. And somehow I've just been stuck in that groove for the last 25 years, and I'm still dealing with complaints. But for those of you listening,
Concerns, not complaints. Remember, concerns.
exactly. They're concerns, they're complaints. That's why they're not claims, they're complaints. But that's where Paul and we have a good time, because he comes from the cleaning and restoration and inspection side of the world. I come from the installation and manufacturing side of the world. So we kind of got all 4 bases covered. And we can typically figure out what's going on between the two of us, but we look at it at a completely different way. So what do you do now, Paul? Fill everybody in on what you do now.
Well, just kind of to tag on to what you were saying there, I think that that's going to make for some of the more interesting conversations. I think that the viewpoints, when you think someone comes from manufacturing and installation, talking to somebody that comes from mainly claims at this point, concerns, claims, customer service
Complaints.
opportunities.
Complaints is the right word. It's not a claim
uh,
until something's found wrong and then you have to pay. Then it's a
uh,
claim.
well, when I go in, they claim a lot of stuff. I don't know, but you know, that's going to make for a lot of discussion. Sonny and I, one of the strengths I think we have is we've got an ability to disagree on things and have that discussion that hopefully addresses a lot of things that listeners are going to be thinking of and be able to see the other side of the coin, so to speak. We're going to delve into some topics here that aren't exactly
PC.
easy, yeah, peaceful conversations many times. We coming from, like I said, the inspection side. you know, I hear how manufacturers and installers and retailers and distributors talk about each other and the concerns that they have about other segments of the industry. And you know, the less you know about a different segment of the industry, the easier it is to I don't know if the words blame them or
Be critical. Yeah.
be
It's easier to
suspicious,
be
be
critical of
critical.
them.
Exactly.
Sure.
I
Sure.
think that's a big part of what we're able to cover, you and I, in the sense that, we can represent some of those industry segments and be able to ask the questions that otherwise really don't seem to get asked.
Right.
But yeah, at this point, I'm in inspections. I'm a full-time flooring inspector. I'm certified by the ISCRC, the National Wood Floor Association. I do education with the National Academy of Floor Covering Training and certify in subfloor substrates. We do inspections training in resilient and hardwood and carpet as well. But mainly at this point, most of my time is spent in the field looking at flooring failures and finding out why they failed. And I think that portion of the industry is also kind of an overview of it. You have to have a working knowledge of all those segments of the industry, or you really can't determine who is at fault. And sometimes it's what I see in inspections is that inspectors' inability to remove their hat of where they came from. So if you're an inspector and you came out of installation or you came out of manufacturing, to be able to step back and look at that more as information that's useful, but you're no longer looking at any sort of a flooring concern as a manufacturer, an installer, a cleaner, whatever it is. But that's really how I got into inspections, was doing correctional work for manufacturers and solving problems for local retailers. So, you know, and I know from talking to a lot of installers, inspectors that come out of that field aren't exactly the most popular. And oftentimes there's, what do you know about installation? But the carpet cleaners, the maintenance people that go into the field, really have already spent a lot of time doing problem solving because they're dealing with that material after it's been in service for a period of time. And especially when there's nothing that's manifest before maintenance and all of a sudden you do something and you've got adhesive coming out of the joints or you've got a carpet that's all wavy, you've got to figure that out, because if you don't, you're going to have to either replace a material or go to court on it, I guess. And so
Yeah, not only do you have to tell them what's wrong, you have to be able to prove why that's what you said is wrong. And that's the big difference in a professional inspector and an inspector. Just 2 cents.
yeah, some people would call a professional inspector redundant, some would call it an oxymoron, but
Exactly.
so
My favorite story for Paul and I is when we met early on. We were at a convention, and he knew my disdain for inspectors. I've been on the manufacturing side and the installation side. Inspectors, maybe we don't get along all that well, but the funny thing is I told him, I said, I have this feeling for towards inspectors, but when it comes to you, you're more like the least smelly homeless guy that I've met. And I really meant that as a compliment, man. I hope he took it as one, but
yeah,
that's been our
I'm
joke.
still not
He's
sure.
the least smelly homeless guy.
I'm still not sure about that, but uh, it was memorable.
Yeah. We still get a good laugh out of that for sure.
Obviously, we worked together for a long time, so I couldn't have taken it too insulting. But so, who was the first manufacturer you worked for, and what was your position with them?
Well, the first manufacturer I worked for was actually Pleshek. And a lot of the old timers will remember that company. They sold adhesives. At the time, they called it Parabond, and I was an agent for them down in Central Florida. And this was back when John Jordan himself, he still owned the company, and he asked me to come up, and I'd helped him on a couple of claims, and he asked me to come up and be the technical person for their floor covering line. I told him no. I said, no, I'm not moving my family from Florida. It's not going to happen. I had 2 boys in middle school. My daughter was 3. It's not going to happen. So finally he called me up, and those people on here who know Mr. Jordan, he was just a great guy. And unfortunately, he passed away a couple of years ago, but he called me up. He said, Sonny, what's your real name? I said, well, Mr. Jordan, it's Harold. He says, "Okay, Harold, I got you and your wife a plane ticket, and you'll come up see me next week." I said, "Yes, sir. I'll be there. No problem." And sure enough, he brought us up and brought us into the plant Monday morning, first thing. And we are at the plant maybe 2 hours. And he gave us a list of about 20 places to visit in Greenville, South Carolina. Downtown, some waterfalls, things like that. By that afternoon, my wife was like, "Why aren't you up here working yet?" 2 weeks later, I was up here working. So he sold my wife Wendy, and then we were up here. I was up here working. He knew exactly what he was doing.
So the whole visit really had nothing to do with you.
No, had nothing to do. It was all selling Wendy, and he knew that's what he had to do to get me up here. And the boys finished out that grade of school. They moved over. They moved in the summertime and came up here, and by far the best decision I ever made in my life. I love living up here in South Carolina. So,
You're not missing Florida too much, huh?
no, not at all. Not at all. Not
Florida's
at
in the
all.
news. It's in the news a lot. I mean, it seems like a real interesting place to live.
Yeah, well, it's a hurricane target, so that it didn't help. In 2004, we had 3 hurricanes literally cross over
Oh,
our house, and we're like, "Nah, we're gone. We're done." Good thing we have a couple of weeks left, and that was it. So no
yeah,
hurricanes
especially.
up here. All 4 seasons. It's 65 degrees today. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I can see that challenge. I got kids right now. My oldest is 10, and my girls are 8. So I got twins, and my youngest is 7. I can't imagine uprooting at this point and having everybody start over in a new location. That had to have been more
And
than
a
a
new school.
challenge.
My boys were not happy for about a year. It took a while, but once they realized it, they're glad. They're certainly glad we moved here. So.
I'm not sure if it goes quite as well if a Yankee like me moves down south of the Mason-Dixon line, but
No, no, not at all. I moved north to the country to be more in the south. I moved north.
gotcha. And
Some
yeah, that's true. The further
some
north
people
in
say
Florida you
some
go,
some people say they live in the Bible Belt. This is the buckle right through here.
the buckle. They say about Florida, the further north in Florida you go, the further south you are.
Exactly. That's 100% true.
Yeah, you don't
100% true.
associate Miami and Key West too much with Nashville. I don't think
No.
that's a direct association. So so Sonny and I have worked together, I don't know, probably 5, 6 years now with NAFCT. And this is really all part of what we're trying to do. It's part of trying to get the education out there, but traveling to schools and taking certification classes is pretty expensive. There's a lot of technology out here where we're going to be able to utilize to get more out there, and I think that's one of the things we're really moving forward with NAFCT, and that's kind of the pause we have right now is moving into some of the other areas where education can be provided. And education isn't just training classes. I mean, we're going to bring some people in here. We're going to talk about some things that are very in depth, very technical, and cover subjects like, you know, there's a lot of vinyl plank flooring out there right now, and the more of any flooring that gets out there, the more claims you have on it. So we'll have some discussions about where those are successful, where they're not, and some of those
Well,
contributing factors.
it never fails when we have one of our classes, um, no matter where it is. Paul and I, and usually Seth Pavarnik from Ardex is the other presenter. But the curriculum is usually the smallest part that we talk about. We usually talk about the real world things that come up. Um, we're just immersing ourselves in flooring from 7 o'clock in the morning to 10 o'clock at night because we're at lunch together, we're at dinner together, and we really try to help people who go through these programs. Why are you having the problems that you're having, and what can you do to resolve them and not have them again? And that's the biggest thing that we like to do. Anybody who does education or provides education, be it in floor covering, be it in auto mechanics, in school, traditional education, you're not in it for the money. Okay, we're not getting rich by this. We both have full-time jobs that we do separate from NAFCT. We're doing this because we like helping people. We like sharing what we know. We've had some awesome experiences and met some great people through the years in flooring, and we want to share this information that we have with other people, and that's what we're going to try to do here. We mentioned having Ken Ballin on the show. We're going to have manufacturers rep. We'll have the Seth Pavarniks of the world. We'll have just about any manufacturer that you have out there. If you have a request, send us an email, and we can make sure we can reach out to that person and try to get them on the show. But that's the goal of what this is going to be.
Yeah, and not to say we're not going to let the guests talk about some of their products, some of the things that they have out, but it's not going to be an approach of a marketing type guest. We're not going to have them in just to do that. We're gonna need to ask them some questions that people in the industry are asking.
Yeah, we're not going to do an editorial.
No, absolutely not. No, but you will be able to hear about some new products. You will be able to hear about some different things out there, and even with our background, we still know the importance of talking about industries. And if we're going to talk about, inspections, we're going to talk to inspectors from different disciplines. We're going to talk to people from different certifications and things like that. We're not going to limit this to things that we're working on. And believe me, between the two of us, we're working on, we got our fingers in almost everything that's going on out there to some degree. So hopefully it's found to be something that people learn a lot from, but also have enough laughs in it that it's not like watching paint dry. It's not like watching adhesive dry.
I think they'll be listening to the paint dry.
They'll be listening to the paint dry. So where are you at now? What are you involved in? What's your main focuses? What are some of your projects?
Yeah. Well, the main thing that takes up most of my time right now is about a year and a half ago, coming up on 2 years, I started Divergent Adhesives. So my background has been in adhesives for the past 15 or so years. Like I said before, the installation before that, it was really a natural transition for me to go from working from a larger company and start my own adhesive company. And I've been fortunate enough to be able to do that. Like I said, over the last 18 months or so, now we've got the product guides together. We've got the product line together. We're starting to do trade shows, starting to go out and meet with folks and start to sell some adhesive. It's amazing how much it takes to get an adhesive program put together to be able to sell. And that's taken up most of my time, like I said, for the last 18 months or so. But I talk about glue. That's what I do. I go all around the Southeast and all across North America, actually, and talk about adhesives.
Well, and I think being upfront with who we are, that's part of it, right? People need to know who we are, where we came from, but everything that we've worked on, we've as NAFCT, we've put on the Floor Essential events and have had manufacturers contribute to those from, people that some would consider competitors. We consider them peers. It's not a matter of, yeah, this is who I am, this is who I work for. That's not what this is about. That's not what NAFCT is about. That's really just more of that's where we generate our income, but that's not what we're trying to do in the industry.
Right. Well, and that's a good point, bringing up the Flooring Essentials. For those of you who don't know what the Flooring Essentials class is we take a day and a half, 2 days, and we actually walk you through every part of what is vinyl for a resilient. This is a resilient course. What is vinyl? What makes it the category that it's in? What type of substrates there are out there? How do you check the moisture in those substrates? How do you prep those substrates? How do you choose the right glue? How do you install it? How do you finish it? How do you maintain it? All the way from the beginning to the end. And again, you're completely immersed in floor covering because you're around some of the top people in the industry. And like Paul said, for that weekend, we're not competitors. I'll sit next to Sam Biondo from Mapei. I'll sit with Seth at Ardex. We're going to be talking about what we can do to make the industry better, because that's the only way we all get better is if we share what we know. So the Flooring Essentials is not, like I said, not to try to sell that class. We don't have one coming up, but I, it is something that I enjoy doing. It is a fun couple of days. So,
and to get the listeners and those that are just getting to know us a little bit to understand that we're used to working with people that our peers in the industry. We're used to working with and exchanging ideas. Yeah, there's always a sales aspect to things when you're in a technical field, but really it's more about the answers. It's more about making sure people are being trained properly, because the less failures there are, the more professional the industry, the better it is for everybody.
Oh, definitely. And I tell people this is the pitch I use whenever I'm asking somebody to come to one of these events. The pitch I say is, if you teach someone how to use your product, what did you just do? You just sold them your product. So you can reach sales through education. And that's
Absolutely.
really important to do. And that's how we get these great sponsors, because without the sponsors, we couldn't have these events. So, you can learn and you can sell at the same time. So it is fun for everybody.
So I think that really coming up through the industry, one of the key things that we have in common is that we have worked with a lot of associations. We've served on committees. We've served on boards. Uh, we've done public speaking at different events. Last year at Surfaces, Sonny and I got to talk about concrete vapor emissions and testing and things like that. So, you know, I'm happy to be right now on the IICRC board. I felt an affinity for that. I came up through that industry. That was kind of my career path, and that's how it laid out, right? I started out into the carpet cleaning. I did some restoration, and there's journeyman and master levels within that segment. Started doing that problem solving, getting into inspections, and now doing inspections. And really, even if you continue the career path, getting into education, then that's part of the IICRC. So, there's a lot of things that we can touch on as far as that goes. And the people that you meet, we can talk about NAFCT and the classes and the education. There's a college education you can get just at all the lunches and dinners and social events that you go to, and just talk industry things with people that have been in it. I mean, we've had some great conversations with oh gosh, now I'm going to forget his name. Sim Chrysler, right? I mean,
Oh, definitely. Yes. Sim Chrysler's the man, by the way. I hope he listens. But he's one of those guys. He's been around the industry for a long time. And when he speaks, you shut up and listen. And that's the best thing you can do. But the most important thing is, I like to, consider myself a professional. I think I know a lot. But you know what? If I don't know something, I'll ask the question. And
absolutely.
there's, the old adage, there's never a dumb question. Ask the question. We've had so many great conversations start with somebody who was scared to ask a question. And it turns out there were 10 other people in the room who didn't know the answer.
Right.
Or there were 10 different answers they had. So we ended up having a great discussion about it. So never be afraid to ask a question when you're in a group. Except for on social media, because they may be a little mean. But when you're in
Yeah,
person, ask whatever you want, and they'll be happy to help you.
like you said, I think it's a slide in one of my presentations that says you can either not ask a question, or you ask a question and look like a fool for a minute, or not ask the question and be a fool for your life.
Is that between all
And
the
it's
Star Wars ones that you have, or
the Star Wars quotes. Yeah, well, there's some geekdom.
never a dull moment with this guy giving a presentation?
I try not to. I try not to. So in your associations and the volunteer work you do now, that extends beyond, working and volunteering on committees. Gets way more in depth than I think a lot of people understand. We both have had the opportunity to work on some standards, right? To do some you work with ASTM pretty regularly still, right?
We do. FO6.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the FO6 is the resilient committee. I'm still involved with that one. FCICA. I'm on the board of directors for FCICA. Golly, what? Let's see. I'm a director of education for NAFCT. I'm the editorial advisory board for FCI. There's so many things. You can get so wrapped up in all these acronyms throughout our industry, but what the point we're trying to make is, we're not trying to brag and say what we're doing, is we want you to get involved. There's plenty of opportunities. I mentioned before, my strong suit is adhesives, not ceramic, right? So if I wanted to know something about ceramic, I would go to one of these boards and I would find somebody in that group who could help me. So again, find the one that's comfortable with you. There's ones for installers, there's groups for project managers, there's groups for salespeople, there's groups for instructors, for inspectors, whatever your niche in the market is, there's certainly an organization that can help and benefit you and make you better at your job, because ultimately that's everything we're trying to do, right? We want to be good, but we want to be better. But Paul touched on it a little bit before, but the great thing about floor covering is there's so many options available for you. Again, I told you I started out as a helper. That's about I swept floors and scrape floors. That's how I started out. But look at me now. I've started my own adhesive company. I like to think I'm well perceived in the industry. So the possibilities are endless. There's so many career paths you can go. If you want to go into sales, if you want to go on technical services, do you want to go to the operations side? Anybody with installation backgrounds, it just opens doors. You can go wherever you want.
Oh, definitely. I think the ability to move around, to move up in the industry, and you brought up a key word, and it's something that we're planning on talking about with every guest that we have in is career path, right? We could talk about bio. Someone, what's your bio? Where did you? Well, the bio that you get from somebody is their career path and where they started, the steps they took, and how they got to the point they're at now. And even going beyond that to where do they plan to go from there? What's their goals? What's their, how do they plan to retire rich, right? I'm not, but
I just want to retire at some point.
I said I got 4 kids. I'm definitely not retiring rich. Not going to happen. But that's going to be something that we cover on virtually every show. And whether it's specifically talking about career path or not, that is, the flooring industry offers options. It really does. There's things that you can do, and you start exploring those options. We were talking about associations and things like that. Well, you have to have all sorts of different segments within a committee when you're working with ANSI, when you're working with ASTM. It has to be representative of the industry at large in order to make it a standard. And I think that's an important part to think about with working with those types of organizations, is the fact that that's a network of people that now you're working with on a regular basis to try to write a standard, to try to, come up with a consensus in the industry regarding a given topic. You're going to argue with them, but you're also going to see the people that have good basis for their arguments. You're going to get to know what their point of views are, and kind of an extension of what we're doing here. Or here's an extension of what they're doing.
Yeah, if you can listen to someone's argument against you and understand it, that's the best you can be. I mean, that's if you can totally understand what the problem is, that's when you find the solution.
Absolutely. So, we're going to have some people in that we know from some of these committees. We'll talk specifically about a given standard. We'll talk about standards organizations, how they work, how to get involved with them. And we can give a lot of direction on that because we both have a lot of experience. If you go through the organizations that are in the flooring industry, there aren't too many that Sonny and I haven't served on committees with. Just off the top of my head, we've already listed FCICA, we've listed NWFA when I was talking about my certifications, IICRC. We got CFI out there. We work with them. You think of an association, ICRI, yep. There are so many of them, but we have served on those committees and we've seen the work that they do. The volunteer work, there's so many people out there that are just volunteering their time to make the industry better. And that's all it is time. Sometimes you might have to travel, but overall, all you're really doing is getting on conference calls and exchanging emails and working together. And that's one of the strengths, but I think we could expand on it.
Right. No, exactly. That's what I hope this podcast will do as well. Just open up the line of communication, and like I said before, we can share what we've learned. You can teach us things, because Paul and I are definitely here to learn as well, because we hear things every day that we have not heard before. and we look forward to it.
Yeah. That I think when you get into education, I think that's an extension of the appreciation you had for the education you received coming up through the industry. Uh, I think it's as much the mentoring aspect to it, being able to, yeah, even when we comment on Facebook posts and different groups, it's always a matter of trying to mentor, trying to get the information out there. Not everybody's that way, don't get me wrong. That's sometimes, but in our private conversations, we can just tell each other when we're not on the right line of thinking. But it's always a matter of mentoring. It's always a matter of trying to impart our knowledge and mentor others, and look for people that have more knowledge than us, and let them mentor us. I mean, it's an ongoing process.
Everybody in this industry, in any industry actually, should always have a go-to person. If they don't know the answer to something, they should have a person or a group of people that they can go to. Yes. I've got one. We have a group. There's 5 or 7 of us total, and it's a group text. And if we see something we don't know, we'll shoot it in that text. And right. I look forward to introducing everybody that's on that text message thread. But you'll see between the 7 of us on there, if we can't figure it out, what
are you going to share? Are you going to share all those messages with us? Or are you going to?
I may not share all the messages. It's not X-rated. It's PG-13.
It's a private conversation.
Is it PG or PG-13 we're going for here?
Well, we're going for PG. We'll just
learn. No, I can't even talk about this text message thread then. Just forget I even said anything, because we're over the limit.
Cut that out. Hit that edit button quick.
The point is, always have somebody that you can go to. Again, don't be afraid to ask that question. It's so important to have someone or a group of some people who can help you. That's really important.
And I think the idea that people in your industry and then people in complementary industries gives you that other perspective on it too. So you're going to get some very specific information that other people, like what you're saying. I've got friends that I do the same thing with in inspections. Sometimes they have the answers, but sometimes I need to take that to a person I know from manufacturing or a person I know from installation, get their opinion on it, because when you see one thing every day, you sure do start to see things that other people don't see. Right. And if those problems are coming back, or those situations, that answer might not always be within your own industry. It might be coming from somewhere else. And yeah, that networking part of it. So we're going to put some contact information out there for people that come on the show. And I'm sure that some of you will hear them talk and know that they have the ability to help with the circumstance you're facing. And if we help expand that network, that's going to be just a bonus for the show overall.
No, absolutely. But on the flip side, this industry is notorious for doing something because somebody said that's the way they did it. You've got to make sure your sources are validated. Because you've done it for 20 years that way is not the answer.
See, now I always thought it was 30 years. I've been doing it this way for 30 years.
If I walk up and somebody says, I tell them something and they go, I've been doing it this way for 30 years, I just stop talking, because that's their way of saying, I'm not going to listen to you. That's essentially what they said. You're not going to argue with them. But again, just make sure that who you're talking to has been validated, and you can trust what they say.
Well, and where does it come from? Because the idea that you learn a lot from people that you work with closely, if you're an installation and there's somebody that's been in the industry a long time, you've definitely learned things from them, but they've had their own ingrained bad habits that you've also learned, and you may not even know.
Unteaching is way harder than teaching.
Yeah.
Trust us, we see that when we're doing these classes. So, and plus these job sites, I'll share a quick anecdote or story. I'll leave out where it was, but I'll just say it was a federal job and it was a union job. And how can I describe it? It had over $350 million worth of
Ooh.
antiques and art and things in the building. Let's leave it at that. So they were taking up carpet tile and putting down hardwood, and they just peeled up the carpet, and then the guy behind them came by with the urethane trowel and just started troweling urethane adhesive right on top of the pressure sensitive tacky. Couldn't figure out why their shoes were sticking, and they were sticking through the floor. And luckily I got there. They only had a thousand or so feet down, and I told them that they've got to stop. They can't keep doing what they're doing, and obviously got the speeds. That's the way we've always done it. Blah blah blah. I was like,
The
look,
directions say I can put it over adhesive residue, right?
yeah, exactly, adhesive residue. Well, here comes the GC, and he's, I don't know, every bit of 6'5", 6'6", and he tries standing over me. I'm not a very tall person. He tries standing over me and bullying me, telling me that they're going to do it this way, and I'm like, well, no, you're not going to do it that way. I kept thinking they were going to find my body in the river somewhere, but once I explained to them that it's not a matter of if, but it's a matter of when with this, the hundreds of millions of dollars that were at stake because they didn't want to take the time to either skim coat it or scrape it
Right.
was just crazy. You can't treat this 100,000 square foot job the same way you would Mary Homeowner's kitchen. Maybe you got away with that in the kitchen, maybe, worst case, but you still wasn't the right way to do it. And that's what we try to talk about and show you why that, if you try to do things the wrong way, eventually it is going to catch you.
Oh, there's no question. I just wrote an article too about that in what's the FCICA magazine, the one that they
Contractor,
contractor,
something.
and it was basically just talking about that and the position flooring professionals find themselves in, where the project's behind already because the weather was bad or because they had problems with getting the structure enclosed and then the HVAC. Flooring is one of the last things to go in, and any delays there are just dramatically magnified.
Well, and,
And
and it's a finish trade. How do we get the GCs to treat our finished floor the same way they do a wall? An electrician will come in and put an outlet in, and all the dust and wires and rock and everything just sitting on the wood floor. Could you imagine if we got any scrap of adhesive on the wall? The guy would go crazy. Right. Well, so what is different about floor covering? What can we do? I mean, these are kind of things that we want to talk about once we get this thing up and going, is why doesn't flooring get the respect that it should?
absolutely, and how do we get it there?
Yeah.
Get some answers to this.
How did it get there in the first place? I mean, what makes you think that you can just do that? Because you can clean it? I mean, maybe I don't know.
Yeah, it's a floor.
But I'd be upset. I'd be upset to walk in and see that on my floor. It's just crazy.
Oh, and people tracking through it, and everything's an abrasive, right? It's not like talking with somebody this week about desk mats, sandy environment. It's a rigid core floor, and they've got the rolling chairs at all the desks that are just sitting on top of that floor, and trying to explain to them that there's no difference between a piece of sandpaper and the embedded sand on the bottom of those wheels. There's no difference whatsoever. And well, it's a floor. It should be able to, well, no. You put that on concrete, you're going to get through the top layer of the concrete.
Point load is a real thing.
It is. So I think we've really given an overview, and that's the goal. We want everybody that is interested in listening to the show to have an idea of who we are, what our perspectives are, and what we're going to talk about. I think, one of the things that we're going to talk a lot about is just the news stories and discuss different perspectives on that. We're going to talk some about jobs. What do we got in the industry? Sonny and I talk right now. Well, what is there an installer shortage? Pretty much everybody seems to agree that there is. What are some of the aspects to that? What can we do with an installer shortage to make installations better? Right? So how can we, if we're going to try to attract all of these new installers into the industry, how do we attract people that are craftsmen, people that really take the best installers in the industry, learn from them, and become that level of an installer and not just somebody that goes in, puts it down when the boss says put it down and doesn't even take up the carpet adhesive before they do. So
Exactly. Let's train them right the first time, for sure.
we're going to try to. Sonny and I were talking about Ken coming in next week, and one of the topics we're going to talk about that with is marketing, because I think that's one of the things that he is really, really good at. He's got his Facebook page that's out there. What's that Facebook page again?
Skyro Floors.
Flooring installers of a that one.
We'll wait for that one. We'll bring that up when he's here.
We'll talk to Ken about that. But it is all a matter of marketing and putting yourself out there, because once people in the industry know you, we've got a gentleman from Wisconsin that I got to know a little bit, who's now with a manufacturer as a tech rep. He came right through. Zern. I should know these names before I bring them up, shouldn't I? I should
Jay
really.
Zern.
Jay Zern.
Well, I should say Jay and Jen Zern. Two good people. Great people.
But I think that those are people we're going to bring in and talk about, the fact that they got in the industry and how they got to the point of being respected, to the point that manufacturers came to them and said, listen, we'd really like to have you as part of our family.
Yeah. That's it. What else are you doing when you're out there doing your installation? You're selling yourself. You're selling your time and your knowledge, but you're also selling yourself. Show up with clean clothes on every day. Show up in a clean vehicle. And trust me, you'll go farther than the person who doesn't show up like that, because you're selling yourself.
First impressions are always a big thing. I think that's part of marketing. When you roll up into, like you said, that homeowner already, that business owner, that homeowner already has an opinion of you.
They're
before
judging you from the moment you pull up. Absolutely. And we're going to do a complete podcast just on that, because there's a lot of merit to that. And there's actually a lot of science behind that we can share and help. Now, are there days when your van's broke down, you're going to strap a roll of carpet to the top of your Corolla? Heck yeah, that's what we all do, because we want to get the job done, right? But is it your day-to-day? No, your day-to-day is got to be set. So there's going to be a lot of fun stuff that we're going to talk about. Paul's going to throw out an email here in a few minutes so you can send us what you want to talk about. You have specific questions. We're going to try to keep you updated on what's going to come up on future episodes, so you can be ready with questions, things like that.
That's right. We've got the email. The email is floorupodcast@gmail.com. You can reach us both there. Flooru, the letter U, podcast@gmail.com. That's the email address.
Podcast@gmail.com. Okay.
Correct. So any questions?
I'm learning it at the same time you are, folks.
Any questions you have, anything that you want for topics, if you're interested in being a guest on the show, floorupodcast@gmail.com. We've got the website up, floorupodcast.com. So you can see the latest shows there. Some of this is a work in progress. We're not exactly tech guys. We're flooring guys. So it's going to take us a little time, but hopefully within the first couple episodes, we'll have it up on Apple Podcasts. We'll have it out on Stitcher, on Spotify, and so forth, so that I can be reached there. Going to be on YouTube. We're for a YouTube channel for the Floor U podcast. We'll have that up and running. So we're doing some of these things during the show, so it'll be there. Trust me. But Sonny's smiling at me.
May not be there right now, but we'll get it there.
But you'll be able to reach out to us. You'll be able to see. We're going to do some on-location things over the course of time. We're going to do some things that we put on to just YouTube, where it's just different conversations and interviews and live read-ins or live looks at different events that we go to, Facebook page and so forth. You can look for us there for all sorts of additional content, and hopefully at some point it's all different videos. We're able to share some articles, but if you're tuning in for the first one, you're going to see us grow through this process, because it is not exactly something that is in our wheelhouse to begin with. So hopefully we figure it out quicker than not. So, but we do usually try to get some news stories, and we do want to try to keep things a little bit lighthearted. And we'll see how sharing technology here works on the show. But there was an article out this week, and I think job site safety is probably one of the topics we'll spend a lot of time on. And that comes in many forms, but there's a broadcast, and this was in Sydney, and it was shared by Wood Floor Business Magazine this week. We'll just let you listen to the newscast, and we'll see if you think floor or work site safety is important after this.
A young tradie is being treated at Royal North Shore Hospital after an unfortunate accident on a worksite in Mossman. The 18-year-old got his trousers and genitals caught in a belt sander. He was treated at the scene and taken to hospital in a stable condition to have the machinery removed carefully.
So much for PG-13 there, buddy.
PG-13? Hey, that was on the news in Sydney. So, I bet you that young man is a lot more serious about job site safety after that.
Yeah, I bet he wears eye protection now.
But if that doesn't give you an idea of the direction we're trying to take the show, I guess nothing does. It's not all... It hopefully isn't boring. It hopefully is entertaining. And hopefully, in the process, we learn as much as everybody that listens does. I want to thank you, Sonny. This was an idea that was not that long ago, and has grown quickly from there. We've actually been talking about this for almost like 10 days now.
Almost.
So we both in discussions. Yeah, we got to do that. So I thank you for joining me in this, or letting me join you, however you want to look at it.
Oh, this was fun. I'm glad we did it.
I'm looking forward to it. We're going for an hour. We're still at about 52 minutes here, but yeah. I think everybody's heard enough of us talk for one day. I think we've got the point across what we're going to cover. And next week we've got Ken Ballin. Flooring installer. Really, really knowledgeable guy, but somebody that's a peer in the industry, somebody that you're going to get real information from regarding flooring installation. This isn't somebody that's at the 30,000 foot level looking down telling installers what to do. This is a guy that's on his knees every day and working his butt off.
That's right.
So we're going to discuss that. You want to reach us, you can reach us at floorupodcast@gmail.com. I'm sorry. Screw that up right away. I'm really good with these reads. floorupodcast@gmail. We also have floorupodcast.com. And you will be able to find us on our YouTube page at Floor U Podcast. So please feel free to send us any questions, any ideas you've got. Happy to talk about them. Obviously, if there's some advertising you'd like to do on the show, feel free to reach out. We're not opposed to making a buck or two off it. Probably not going to be more than that, but what the heck. But feel free to reach out for that. And tune in next week. We're going to put the podcast out once a week. It's going to be an hour long. And if everybody's interested, we'll expand it out from there. So thank you very much for joining us, and have a great week.
Thanks, everybody. See you next week.